I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen being.
The Royal Council had gathered expecting a routine discussion about the monarchy's future. Instead, Prince William rose from his chair, opened a faded envelope bearing Diana's private seal, and began reading instructions she had written for the day her eldest son assumed greater authority. Before he reached the final paragraph, Camilla pushed back her chair, stared directly at the future king, and walked out, leaving Charles frozen, the councillors speechless, and the monarchy facing a truth it had buried for decades. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles knew everyone at the table understood the danger. Windsor Castle's council chamber had hosted private decisions, yet the Royal Council, a confidential gathering, where royals and advisors discuss matters affecting the crown, had rarely faced anything personal. The king sat at the head, William opposite, while Camilla watched him closely. Anne, Edward, Catherine, and advisors expected a discussion about duties, patronages, and succession planning. William did not hesitate. He explained that the sealed letter came from Diana's private papers and had been preserved through a documented account entrusted to him after her death. The prince read her instructions aloud. Protect his wife and children from palace manipulation. Preserve honesty within the family, and never allow those connected to her isolation to control the next generation. Catherine watched his fingers tighten around the paper. She knew he was not honoring a memory. He was enforcing a boundary. Camilla changed when one sentence reached her. Diana had warned against those who mistook closeness to the sovereign for ownership of the monarchy. The queen consort placed both hands on the table and demanded to know why a private letter had entered an official meeting. Her voice stayed measured, but anger sharpened every word. William answered that the warning mattered, because influence was shaping decisions concerning his household. Charles said nothing. The king lowered his eyes, removed his glasses, and left them beside the papers. That silence struck harder than any defense. Anne looked toward her brother, then back at the letter, realizing he had known it existed. Catherine understood the implication too. Diana's instructions had not suddenly surfaced. Someone had chosen to keep them buried. William continued. The future king read the final warning steadily. Personal guilt, romantic loyalty, and private pressure must never override duty to the crown. Camilla turned toward Charles and waited. He did not speak. The queen rose so quickly that her chair scraped across the floor. She held the monarch's gaze once, walked out, and closed the heavy door. Her departure was not merely anger. It exposed what everyone around that table stood to lose. Long before the council chamber fell silent, Diana had shaped the emotional lives of the three people now trapped inside it. William carried her memory as both a wound and a command. Charles carried the knowledge that history had never forgiven him. Camilla carried the fear that no title, ceremony, or coronation could remove Diana's presence from the monarchy. The letter did not create their conflict. It forced each of them to confront the role they had spent years pretending, no longer defined them. William understood the monarchy through the pain of his childhood. Public duty had continued, even when private grief became unbearable, and that memory never left him. To the prince, Diana's instructions were not sentimental words from the past. They were unfinished responsibilities. Every warning in the letter reminded him that the crown could demand silence from those already suffering, and he feared Catherine and their children could one day face the same isolation. Camilla carried a different burden. She had spent years fighting for acceptance, enduring suspicion, hostility, and constant comparison with Diana. The queen consort believed her coronation had finally proved the institution had moved beyond the past. Yet one faded letter had undone that certainty. Outside the chamber, she refused help from an approaching aide and waited alone, breathing unevenly, listening for footsteps that never came. Charles remained caught between two loyalties. The king knew that defending his wife might wound his son beyond repair, while supporting William could destroy the trust he had built with Camilla. His hesitation was not simple weakness. It was the paralysis of a man forced to choose between the life he had created and the damage he could never erase. Catherine noticed William smoothing the edge of the paper again and again. She knew his calm voice hid a deeper fear. He was not only protecting Diana's memory, he was protecting her, George, Charlotte, and Louis, from becoming trapped inside decisions made without their consent. Anne finally leaned toward her brother. "Did you know what was in it?" she asked. Charles removed his glasses, placed them beside the papers, and kept staring downward. The silence answered more than words could. William then revealed why he had brought the letter forward. Camilla had requested a formal advisory role in decisions involving the Wales household, including Catherine's duties and the children's ceremonial preparation. The prince believed that request crossed the very boundary Diana had warned him to defend. Then he turned the page. The future king told the councillors that a second sheet remained, one naming the exact danger Diana believed could divide the royal family. To understand why William considered that warning urgent, they would have to revisit the private incident that transformed years of discomfort into open confrontation. The crisis had begun 6 weeks earlier, during what should have been an ordinary rehearsal for a national service. There were no shouting voices, no public scandal, and no dramatic announcement. There was only Camilla, a seating chart, and a quiet instruction concerning Princess Charlotte that William could not ignore. Those present later remembered the exact moment his expression changed. He said nothing in the room, but that evening, he unlocked Diana's private box and removed the letter that would eventually bring the royal council to a standstill. William had entered St. George's Hall expecting routine preparation. The national Thanksgiving service was meant to celebrate unity, while the Lord Chamberlain's staff, the officials responsible for organizing major royal ceremonies, guided the family through their entrances, seating positions, and order of precedence. Charles had asked Camilla to review several arrangements on his behalf, and she had gradually begun treating that responsibility as something broader. Her supporters called it practical support for the king. The prince saw something more dangerous, private influence quietly reaching into decisions involving his wife and children. Camilla studied the procession plan and made one change. She ordered Charlotte moved away from Catherine and placed beside one of her own relatives during the second procession. The queen consort argued that the adjustment would present a more united modern family and told the staff to implement it immediately. She did not ask William, she did not consult Catherine, she simply assumed the matter was settled. Charlotte heard enough to understand she was being separated from her mother. The young princess turned to Catherine and quietly asked whether she had done something wrong. Her mother reassured her at once, but the question cut deeply. Catherine then looked toward William, and he understood exactly what she feared. This was no longer about ceremonial order. It was about someone using a child to create a public message. William waited until the rehearsal ended before asking Camilla to speak privately. With no aides present, the future king told her that decisions involving his children would never be used to improve another branch of the family's image. His voice remained calm, but his meaning was absolute. Camilla answered that Charles had approved the arrangement. That claim changed everything. The prince recognized the pattern Diana had warned about, personal wishes being presented as royal commands before the sovereign had confirmed them. That evening, William confronted his father in the king's library. Charles admitted he had reviewed a general proposal, but had never authorized Charlotte's reassignment. The truth was unmistakable. Access to the monarch had once again been confused with authority over the family. William returned to Kensington Palace and opened Diana's locked correspondence box. Catherine watched him read one page twice before he finally looked up. She knew this could happen, he said. When William later entered the council carrying that letter, Camilla understood that the dispute over Charlotte had become a direct test of her power. The council door had barely closed behind Camilla when it opened again. She returned, not because her anger had faded, but because leaving had allowed William's interpretation to stand unchallenged. Walking directly to the table, she accused him of turning his mother's pain into a political weapon. William did not raise his voice. He placed Diana's letter between them and answered with a sentence that transformed the meeting from a family argument into a battle over the crown. I am using it to prevent history from repeating itself. Camilla had regained her composure, but not her calm. Her face still carried the shock of what she had heard, and every person in the chamber understood that she had returned to fight for her place. No one had moved. Charles had not ended the meeting, which meant the challenge remained official. The Royal Council, a private gathering where senior royals and advisors considered decisions affecting the monarchy, was still in session, and William's accusation could no longer be dismissed as a family quarrel. "You are using her against me," Camilla said. William met her gaze and refused to retreat. The prince answered that Diana's warning would not matter if the same patterns of pressure, isolation, and indirect control were not appearing again. He did not accuse Camilla of becoming his mother's past. He accused her of creating the conditions that had once allowed that suffering to begin. Camilla's anger broke through. She reminded Charles that she had spent years beside him, accepting hostility, serving the crown, and supporting an institution that had once treated her as an embarrassment. The queen consort insisted she was being judged by a woman who was no longer present, to see how much the monarchy had changed. Yet William answered that dignity was not the issue. The future king said her marriage to the monarch did not give her authority over Catherine's household or the upbringing of George, Charlotte, and Louis. Then William turned to the second page. Diana's warning was precise. The next Princess of Wales must never become dependent upon courtiers whose first loyalty belonged somewhere else. The title referred to the wife of the heir, but the message went deeper. Catherine could not be protected if decisions around her were quietly controlled by another household. Catherine finally spoke. She confirmed that Camilla's office had repeatedly requested private briefings about her schedule, staff appointments, and the ceremonial preparation of the children. She had refused those requests and remained silent to preserve peace. Camilla turned toward Charles. "Do you believe I have threatened the future of this monarchy?" Every face shifted toward the king. His answer would decide more than her influence. It would reveal whether personal devotion still outweighed constitutional responsibility. Charles had spent much of his life resisting choices that demanded a permanent emotional cost. Yet in the council chamber, hesitation had become a decision of its own. Camilla waited for reassurance. William waited for clarity. Catherine waited to learn whether her family would be protected. The king slowly gathered the papers before him, not to end the meeting, but to clear the space. Then he looked at his wife and acknowledged that her office had crossed a line he should have defined much earlier. Charles rubbed his thumb against the edge of his signet ring before speaking again. The ring, a symbol of royal identity and personal authority, had never felt heavier. His voice remained quiet. He explained that Camilla held enormous symbolic importance beside him, but she possessed no separate constitutional control over the Wales household. Her influence came through access to the monarch, not through an independent chain of command, and that difference could no longer remain blurred. William listened without triumph. As heir, the prince increasingly controlled his own staff, family arrangements, and long-term planning. The Wales household meant the private team and structure supporting him, Catherine, and their children. Any attempt to supervise that household without his consent was therefore more than interference. It challenged the future king's authority before his reign had even begun. Charles finally stated the boundary. Every request from Camilla's office involving Catherine's duties, the children's ceremonial preparation, or William's private staff would stop immediately unless the prince personally invited consultation. The king did not soften the order. He did not hide it behind careful wording. He made the restriction clear enough that no advisor could later reinterpret it. Camilla stared at him in disbelief. She asked whether years of loyalty had earned her nothing more than public rank without private trust. The queen consort reminded him that she had endured humiliation, hostility, and sacrifice to stand beside him. Charles answered with visible pain. "Trust," he said, "could never mean authority without limits." William lowered his gaze. The future king had achieved the protection he wanted, yet victory brought no relief. He saw what the ruling had cost his father, and understood that defending his own family had reopened wounds across another marriage. Anne then proposed a lasting safeguard. Diana's accusations would remain private, but her principles concerning spouses, children, and household independence would enter the confidential succession framework, the internal rules guiding how authority passes to the next reign. Charles approved. An advisor pushed the amended protocol toward Camilla. She did not touch it. Instead, she removed the folder bearing her royal cipher, placed it on the table, and said, "Then you no longer require my presence." This time, when Camilla left, she stepped away not merely from the meeting, but from the machinery of royal power itself. Within an hour, the palace continued moving as though nothing had happened. Staff crossed corridors carrying red boxes. Cars entered the quadrangle. Dinner arrangements were confirmed. But behind the closed door of Camilla's private sitting room, the queen removed her brooch, placed it beside a framed photograph of Charles, and stared at the empty chair opposite her. The council had not taken away her title. It had done something more personal. It had shown her exactly where her influence ended. Camilla's private secretary received the written order before anyone had time to absorb the meeting. All coordination between her office and the Wales household was suspended until new boundaries could be approved. The Wales household meant the staff and private structure supporting William, Catherine, and their children. What had once moved through informal trust now required formal permission, and that change carried a message no courtier could ignore. Staff began separating shared calendars, briefing papers, and private correspondence. Camilla read Charles's directive twice, folded it in half, and placed it beside the council papers. She did not cry. She remained still until an aide quietly asked whether the evening engagement should be cancelled. "No," Camilla answered. "Canceling would look like defeat." The queen reached for her brooch, but her hands betrayed her. After 2 failed attempts, she passed it to the aide and asked for help. That small surrender wounded her more than the order itself. Publicly, she still carried rank and ceremony. Privately, she had been told that service did not equal control. Charles arrived without staff. The king closed the door and stood before her, but she refused to look at him. Camilla asked why he had allowed Diana's letter to become a judgment on their marriage. She accused him of protecting William by reopening a wound they had spent years trying to survive. Charles answered with a truth he had never shared. In a private note sent shortly before her death, Diana had warned that unresolved guilt would one day shape the way he treated their eldest son. The monarch admitted he had concealed the message because he could not bear to accept that she had understood him so clearly. Camilla finally looked at him. Her fear was not losing briefings, meetings, or influence. It was Diana's permanent moral power. The late princess could no longer make mistakes, offer apologies, or grow old. Her memory would remain untouched while Camilla continued to be judged in the present. Charles reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Before leaving, he said William had requested a private meeting the following morning. Camilla alone would decide whether to attend. By sunrise, advisors and titles would no longer stand between them. Only 2 people, 2 histories, and 1 unresolved wound would remain. There were no officials in the small morning room, no council papers, and no king seated between them. William stood near the window, while Camilla entered alone and closed the door herself. For the first time since Diana's letter had been read, neither of them could hide behind rank. Camilla was not speaking as queen, and William was not answering as heir. They were simply 2 people connected by Charles, divided by Diana, and forced to decide whether yesterday's confrontation would become a permanent fracture within the royal family. William had chosen the room carefully. It was neither an official office nor a place designed for ceremony, because he did not want the conversation to feel like another judgment. The prince wanted one thing made clear. This was about family boundaries, not humiliation. Camilla understood that, but she set a condition before sitting down. She would speak honestly only if he accepted that she had never entered Charles's life intending to become the permanent villain in Diana's story. William did not dismiss her pain. He told Camilla that he did not expect her to carry every part of his childhood grief, nor did he believe one person alone was responsible for everything his mother endured. But the future king refused to pretend that the choices surrounding Diana had no consequences. Silence had consequences. Divided loyalties had consequences. And using private access to shape another household could create the same suffering in a different form. Camilla remained quiet for several moments. Then she admitted the decision involving Charlotte had been wrong. The queen consort confessed that she had wanted her relatives to appear more naturally connected to the royal family during the procession. She had thought about public unity and her own place within it, but she had not considered what the change would make the child feel. William placed Diana's letter on a side table without opening it. The prince told her it had served its purpose. He would not use his mother's words repeatedly to shame Camilla, or reopen the same wound whenever disagreement arose. Her next question revealed the fear beneath everything else. Camilla asked whether William planned to release the instructions after Charles's reign, allowing one private document to define her entire legacy. William answered without hesitation. The letter would remain sealed in the royal archives, the secure collection where sensitive royal records are preserved. It would guide his decisions, not become ammunition for revenge. The protections inspired by it, however, would remain permanent. Camilla accepted the new limits and agreed to support a joint internal statement confirming the independence of the Wales household. Before leaving, she paused. "Your father needs to hear the truth from you," she said, "not as king, as your father." Their agreement ended the power struggle, but only William's next conversation with Charles could heal the wound that had allowed it to begin. The palace had hoped the council confrontation would remain private, but by midday the image was everywhere. Camilla leaving Windsor through a side entrance, her expression rigid as an aide followed several steps behind. No letter was visible, and no official statement had yet been released, but the photograph told its own story. Newsrooms abandoned their planned coverage. Crowds gathered outside the castle gates. Across Britain, one question dominated every broadcast: what had happened inside the room, moments before the Queen walked out. Royal correspondents first sensed trouble when a palace staff movement notice revealed an unexpected change to Camilla's schedule. Her sudden departure confirmed that something inside the council chamber had gone badly wrong. Windsor officials refused to discuss Diana's letter, but they confirmed that new household protocols had been approved. These protocols were formal rules, protecting the operational independence of William and Catherine, meaning their staff, children, duties, and private decisions could no longer be influenced by another royal office without permission. By the following morning, the confrontation had become impossible to contain. One national newspaper placed the Windsor departure photograph across its front page, beneath the words, "Diana's words returned to the palace." Camilla appeared composed, yet the tension in her departure gave the image extraordinary force. The headline transformed a private disagreement into a national reckoning over memory, power, and the future of the crown. An evening broadcaster pushed the story beyond ordinary royal gossip. During a special program, the presenter called it, "The moment the monarchy's unresolved past collided with its future." That description changed the debate. The public was no longer asking only whether Camilla had stormed out. People were asking whether William had finally challenged a system that once demanded silence from Diana. Several hundred people gathered near the King Henry V gate at Windsor. Some carried photographs of the late princess. Others urged the family to choose reconciliation instead of another public division. One woman stepped forward, placed white roses beside the barrier, and walked away without speaking. That quiet act captured the mood better than any headline. Catherine faced the pressure hours later at a scheduled charity visit. Reporters shouted questions about the letter and Camilla's departure. The princess paused, thanked the waiting crowd for its kindness, and continued without revealing anything. Her restraint became a symbol of the independence William had fought to protect. Then the palace released its decisive statement. Camilla had approved language confirming that William and Catherine held complete authority over their household and children. The agreement proved the internal struggle had been contained. Yet one confrontation remained. Charles summoned William to his private apartments, where both of Diana's letters waited on the table. Away from headlines and crowds, the final verdict would belong to a father, a son, and the woman they had both lost. Charles did not begin by defending Camilla, and William did not begin by accusing him. They sat opposite each other with Diana's 2 letters between them, surrounded by the silence that had shaped their relationship for nearly 30 years. The king finally admitted that he had mistaken avoiding the past for protecting the family. William admitted that anger had sometimes allowed him to hear his mother's pain more clearly than his father's regret. What followed was not forgiveness without consequence. It was the first honest reckoning either man had permitted. Charles spoke through a conversation no advisor would record. He revealed that Diana's separate note had warned him not to let shame make him emotionally distant from William and Harry. The king had hidden it because every reading returned him to moments he could not change. He had chosen silence because it felt easier than accountability. William answered honestly. The prince explained that he had never intended to remove Camilla from his father's life or strip her of dignity. His purpose was urgent: to stop informal influence from reaching Catherine, their children, and the Wales household, the private staff and family structure supporting the heir. That boundary mattered, because private access could become public authority, trapping another generation in the same confusion. Charles apologized for allowing his son to believe that protecting the monarchy required silence about Diana. William did not erase the past, but he accepted that his father was finally taking responsibility instead of hiding behind duty. Together, they placed both letters inside a new archival envelope, a protected cover for sensitive royal records. The monarch applied the royal seal, and the future king wrote instructions keeping the documents private during the lifetimes of everyone involved. Camilla retained her title, duties, and place beside Charles, but permanently withdrew from decisions involving William and Catherine's household. Her agreement was not humiliation. It recognized that service and control were not the same thing. Catherine understood that Diana's suffering had not become spectacle, it had become protection. William returned home that evening, placed the new household protocol inside his desk, and joined Catherine and the children for dinner. Camilla attended her next engagement beside Charles, subdued but composed. The monarchy survived because each person accepted a limit. The king accepted responsibility, the queen accepted boundaries, and the prince chose protection over revenge. Camilla's walkout appeared to divide the royal family, but Diana's instructions achieved the opposite. They forced the crown to confront its past, protect its future, and end silence before it could wound another generation. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.